Yeah, it's right there in the industrial district. So it just happens to be in unincorporated. But that's part. There's nothing we. It's not in. It's not in a residential area. Yeah. It's right there where Bethlehem's gonna be.
I don't know if that was supposed to be Vivian. No, but they're doing it over here. So.
We good on everything?
Oh goodness. You look good this morning, as always.
Okay, can so can we?
What you need?
So we can hear her. Why is it down there?
There's a microphone right on top of it.
Oh, okay. Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to the Henry County Board of Commissioners, 9 a.m. Tuesday, May 2nd, 2023. Regular scheduled BOC meeting. We're going to begin our meeting with our invocation. If we could have Pastor Leonard Hines from Henry County BOC to come forward and to also lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. If everyone would stand.
Stand together, thank you. Our Father in heaven, we come to Thee on this day. And Lord, we thank You for the gift of another day to serve You. So Lord, we ask today that Your Son would shine upon us as a ray of hope, a ray of unity, and that You would place Yourself in this meeting. Lord, we need You day by day, hour by hour. And Father, I ask You bless all of those in our great county that labor in the vineyard. That You'd bless their families, strengthen them. All of our public safety, Lord, this day needs Thy protection. And Lord, in this meeting, may You help us, lead us, give us wisdom, instruction, and knowledge for what needs to be addressed. And we'll thank You and praise You in Jesus' name. Amen. Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated.
Thank you. I am calling our meeting to order. I do want to recognize that Commissioner Vivian Thomas is with us via phone. She is representing us on the national level at NACO at a national meeting. So we appreciate you taking time, Commissioner Thomas, to step out of that meeting to be here at the board meeting this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
The following planning and zoning items were advertised as public hearings for the May 2nd, 2023 BOC meeting, but have been postponed by staff. ULDC Amendment 23-01, an ordinance by Henry County to amend the Unified Land Development Code for for multifamily. That ULDC is being postponed by staff, as well as the ULDC Amendment 23-02 in reference to storm water management facilities. Both of those items have been postponed. If you're here for those items, they will not be heard today. We're going to begin with a presentation, Georgia Tech Master Studio presentation of the plan to address hidden homelessness in Henry County. Shannon.
Good morning, Chair and Board of Commissioners. This morning, we do have the pleasure to hear from the Georgia Tech School of City and Regional Planning, the Graduate Studio. Instructor Dr. Lynn Patterson is our presenter this morning. If you all recall, we received funding and assistance from the Atlanta Regional Commission several months back. It's assistance in their community planning assistance program to work with Georgia Tech. We got the privilege of working with Georgia Tech graduate students. They've been here within our community doing research, and they've developed a plan to assist us with addressing our hidden homelessness. Now, hidden homelessness is what we've defined as those individuals and households that we don't typically see out in the public. These are individuals that might be sheltering with family or friends or sheltering in hotels. If you all would join me, I'd like for Dr. Lynn Patterson to come up and any other students that we have present from Georgia Tech. Thank you, Chair.
Good morning, Commissioners. It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much. I'm actually going to turn this over to Darian Ruggles and Sierra Scott. They are two of our students who are going to do the full presentation for you and will be available for questions afterwards. Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for having us here today. My name is Sierra Scott, and I'm currently a master's student at Georgia Tech in the Master of City and Regional Planning program. Today, we're here to present our plan to address hidden homelessness in Henry County, which again is a result of the county's application to the Atlanta Regional Commission's Community Development Assistance Program. This will be a very high-level summary of our report, and the actual document, which you all will have access to, provides a much more comprehensive and thorough detail. Given the time constraints with this presentation, we'd love to answer your questions at the end. So our team is composed of master's students. Today I'm here with Ivy Barrell, Trevor Butler, Leah Cabrera, Elizabeth Mitchum, Darian Ruggles, and our professor, Dr. Lynn Patterson. Jeremy Ward was not able to be here today. We'd like to give a special thanks to Henry County's Community Development Director, Shannon Sanyo, and ARC Principal Planner, Renata Mattis, for their invaluable input in this plan. We'd also like to thank all community stakeholders who contributed, as well as the Commission for supporting this initiative. So now I'm going to be going over a summary of the existing conditions in Henry County, as well as the purpose of our study. When people tend to think of homelessness, they think of visible encampments. But we're focusing on the individuals and families that live in hotels, motels, cars, and with relatives or friends. This is the manifestation of hidden homelessness. Henry County Public Schools have identified over 1,800 students experiencing hidden homelessness. This means that there are many parents in the same situation, but this doesn't account for the individuals who don't have an affiliation with the school system. There are many services existing in Henry County that support this population, but because they're not connected, it can be hard for individuals to find out what resources are available to help them. So the ARC felt that Henry County had this opportunity to address hidden homelessness and become a leader for other communities in the area. Throughout the course of our study, we've been able to define and identify hidden homeless populations in Henry County, and we've also been able to identify existing services by connecting with stakeholders while recommending potential services. Our hope is that Henry County will take our recommendations and act as a facilitator in coordinating efforts launched by municipalities, nonprofits, and private entities. So each of the services we've put into three categorizations: housing, immediate wraparound services, and extended wraparound services. And again, we found that there were many existing services in Henry County that support the hidden homeless population. We also conducted a benchmark community analysis where we then compared communities of similar size and demographic to Henry County, which allowed us to identify Henry County strengths and where there's room for improvement. So regarding housing, we found that there aren't any emergency housing shelters that support the general population. We did find that there's emergency housing that supports domestic violence victims and children. Next, we found that there was this missing piece of transitional housing, which is essential for people working towards obtaining and maintaining their own housing. And finally, we felt that the moratorium that's currently in place provides a great opportunity for Henry County to discuss long-term affordable housing policies. Next, we have immediate wraparound services, which we define as the provision of job assistance and training, transportation, and food. Transportation is essential to connecting people to jobs, grocery stores, and other resources. So we know that Henry County is in the process of updating and expanding the microtransit plan, and we feel this will really support connecting people to resources. We also found that there were quite a few food banks and resources within the community, but you have to have a car in order to get there, and the hours of operation tend to conflict with traditional working hours. We also found that even though Henry County has many job opportunities, there appears to be a disconnect in ensuring that hidden homeless people can obtain these job opportunities. And finally, we have extended wraparound services, which we define as services that help people maintain their own housing. So from talking to different organizations, we found that there are cumbersome eligibility requirements. There are pretty strict definitions of hidden homelessness, and this tends to exclude hidden homeless. Next, we found that, again, as I mentioned before, there's a bit of fragmented service provision. So since there's no centralized database or system tracking, people don't inherently know how to access the resources that do exist in Henry County. And finally, we found that a lot of these approaches in Henry County tend to be more in response to homelessness rather than outright preventing it. And from our benchmark community analysis, we found that the most effective tool against homelessness was proactive prevention rather than reactive response. And again, I would like to reiterate, this is not Henry County's responsibility to provide all of these services, but rather act as a facilitator and coordinate different entities in connecting these services. So when we created our recommendation, we had this flow in mind, from intervention to transition to stabilization. At the stage of intervention, this is when emergency housing supports and immediate wraparound services are critical, as it helps transition people out of this crisis mode. Then our transition stage, this is when extended and immediate wraparound services are needed, as well as housing supports to really help people be able to maintain and obtain their own housing. And finally, we have stabilization, which, because of all the resources in the previous two stages, now people are able to be self-sufficient in maintaining their own housing. Each of the recommendations that we're going to present are really crucial towards this goal of self-sufficiency, and we feel that Henry County has this opportunity to actually break the cycle of homelessness by coordinating efforts and a cohesive approach against homelessness. And now we have Darian Ruggles, who will talk about our recommendations and implementation steps.
Thank you so much, Sierra, and thank you guys again for having us today. We are super excited to be presenting our recommendations to you. So our recommendations for the county fall into three categories: the organizational changes, housing, and then wraparound services. We see a mix of private, public, and private partnerships taking the lead on funding and implementing each of these recommendations. The lead organization for each recommendation is outlined in the implementation section of our full report. So while there are some programs and recommendations to be funded and or implemented by the county, again, we want to reiterate that the county's main role is being a repository and a facilitator. So as a repository, the county would hold all information regarding homelessness and services within the county. And then as a facilitator, the county would connect and coordinate services amongst those organizations. So beginning with organizational changes is really important to understand who the hidden homeless population is and the number of people experiencing hidden homelessness. So creating an understanding begins with establishing a standardized definition and counting method. Second, the county would fulfill its role as a repository with the creation of a website that hosts all the resources available in Henry County and a standardized coordinated entry system, which is where individuals can do one intake assessment and it lets them know what services they qualify for within the county. The coordinated entry system also keeps a record of who's received what services, so it helps ensure that services are not being duplicated as well. Moving forward, case management is really helpful to move families through the continuation of care for hidden homelessness, again, from the intervention standpoint all the way through to stabilization. The creation of a county housing authority would be a complement to the city's existing housing authorities and would partner with them, as the county housing authority would have additional agency and capacity to increase affordable housing units and create more stability within the county. And then last but not least, the creation of a landlord risk mitigation fund would help increase housing availability for those who have been evicted or have a criminal record. This fund would lower a landlord's risk if they did rent out their property to someone with an eviction or a criminal history, as they would have a set amount that they could receive from the fund should they need to in any circumstance. This opens the housing stock a lot, as those that have been evicted or have a criminal record tend to not be able to find an apartment that will accept them, and so they're spending more money in rent at the extended stay hotels as of right now. And so this would just, again, open that housing stock and get more families out of those situations. Moving forward to our housing recommendations, these are broken down into 3 stages that were identified through our study: emergency, transitional, and then permanent. In the emergency housing stage, emergency shelters are places that families can go when an emergency or an eviction happens. As seen in the inventory, currently Henry County only has shelters for domestic violence and unaccompanied children. There's a need for a place that families can go to and stay together when a crisis occurs. Right now, the most common response from the county or organizations within the county when helping families is getting them a hotel room, but that normally only lasts 7 days, and it's very costly for the county or the organizations, and it does not truly give families enough time to get back up onto their feet. And moving from the emergency stage to the transitional stage, transitional housing is for after that emergency crisis, where families can go for at least 30 days up to 1.5 years, and this housing allows for families or young adults to work through whatever emergency or crisis brought them into homelessness and get to that stabilization phase. For transitional housing, we see a couple opportunities. First is the conversion of one of the hotels that is currently housing or sheltering this population into housing with wraparound services. The second is partnering with faith-based organizations or supporting faith-based organizations. And the third is the expansion of a friend's house, specifically for the young adults ages 18 to 21 that have aged out of the foster system, as they're in a really vulnerable place at that time. Next is the third stage of housing, which is permanent housing. And that's what our ultimate goal for everyone in the county is. And so these recommendations really have the most opportunity of all the ones that we're presenting to you today for change, as the county has the most agency to fulfill these recommendations. The impact is not only getting families into housing, but it's keeping families in their homes. And that's by increasing affordable housing in the locations with access to everyday necessities and ensuring the quality of the developments remains high. So starting with land use and location, land use and location planning of multifamily housing is done through the comprehensive planning process. During this process, it is important to ensure that the county is planning for multifamily housing in places that easily connects the families to all that the county has to offer. Second, partnerships with developers who are interested in affordable housing and willing to include wraparound services in conjunction with their development help the county and the tenants of those properties immensely. A great example of this is Walton Communities in Cobb County. Another way to increase the affordable housing stock is the enactment of inclusionary zoning. This is a policy change that requires a set percentage of affordable housing units within every new multifamily development. Then design standards is a little more intricate policy change, which helps to ensure that as developers make changes to the materials to bring down costs when they're creating developments, they're still building quality developments and still using quality materials. And last but not least, adding alternative housing policies allows for housing types that could really suit this hidden homelessness population and vulnerable populations in general. These include things like tiny homes, which would be excellent structures for the youth population between 18 and 21, especially like at a friend's house as an addition. ADU revisions to allow for a couple or a family to live in an ADU on someone else's property. This is perfect for aging parents or grandparents or a family member that needs a place to stay. Additionally, the rental of those facilities to someone outside of your family could help to offset the cost for the homeowner themselves, which could keep them in their home and open an additional rental option in the county. And then last, manufactured homes, which are another low cost housing option. And with this option, we would just suggest having a high level of code enforcement to ensure quality manufactured homes and keep them well maintained. All right, and then wraparound services. So as we spoke in the organizational portion, most of what the county would do regarding wraparound services is keeping a repository of information on what services are available and facilitate partnerships between providers. The focus of these wraparound services we are presenting is long-term stabilization through steady employment and increased income, and they require just a little bit more hands-on approach from the county. So starting with the expanded transportation services, right now in Henry County, having a car is the only consistent way to get to and from work, the grocery store, or any other services that you may need. And which is a big expense for families. And especially since many of these jobs or services could be in neighboring counties, having an interregional transportation service between counties with routes especially to job centers or needed services would really help to alleviate transportation costs and expand opportunities for individuals in the hidden homelessness population. And it would lessen traffic in the county. And for legal services, encouraging or incentivizing local lawyers and firms to provide assistance for those in the hidden homeless population at little or no cost would be helpful to lead to the stabilization for these families. And the county would just keep a list of those lawyers or firms that would be willing to help. Job assistance is another key to stabilization. Two opportunities we see are job fairs and job skills training at accessible locations with flexible times. Job fairs should be with employers that pay livable wages and have benefits, and job skills training should be based on what local employers are truly looking for. Now, we understand that there are a lot of recommendations here, and you guys have limited time and resources. Some of these recommendations will take longer to implement, while others are low-hanging fruit that can be done more quickly. So to help navigate where to begin, we have broken down these recommendations into 4 categories of an implementation timeline. So the priority recommendations are those that help build a foundation and should take a year or less to implement. The short-term, medium-term, and long-term recommendations are expected to be started and implemented within their time frame, so a year to 3 years, 3 to 5 years, and 5 or more years, respectively. In the interest of time, we'll not review each of these recommendations in each category. This list and their prioritization is in the implementation portion of the plan with more details. So thank you again for your time today. We've truly enjoyed learning about Henry County and all that you guys have to offer and creating a plan to help address the needs of the children and the families defined as the hidden homeless. We're happy to take any questions that you guys have.
Are there any questions from the board? Commissioner Wilson.
Thank you for the presentation. There's a lot of hard work went into that. Thank y'all for doing that. The numbers of 1,800 students, that's alarming in our county. So I think we probably need to look into some of the recommendations and try to see what we can do to take care of that and move forward. But thank y'all.
Thank you.
Commissioner Angel.
Just want to tell y'all thank y'all. I just wanted to tell you thank you, and I appreciate actually speaking with you on the phone and just talking about the issues that we do have, and we do understand that, especially I'm looking at the priority, short term, medium, and long term. It is a huge issue that we're dealing with. And I do want to thank the chair for actually getting the grant from ARC to even do the study, because you have to have vision when you're trying to tackle a problem that a lot of people don't even want to recognize is a problem. So first of all, I just want to say thank you for doing this. There's a lot of stuff that we have already been discussing, but this will allow us to crystallize our thoughts and plans going forward. So thank you.
Commissioner Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have no comments at this time. Thank you so much for the presentation. I would like to get a copy of the email to us, please.
And I just want to say thank you, for doing this. I can't remember who I spoke to on the phone during the initial gathering of the information. One of the things that I did not see in here, and I don't know if it's part of the bigger scope of your presentation, is child care services for those individuals that, if they do go to work, or what options are available for child care services. So we would love to, Shannon, make sure that the board gets a copy of this presentation, and then we'll look at next steps as to how we need to move forward. I've been talking about this from day one when I walked in, addressing the homelessness and workforce housing issues that we have here in our community that some don't want to recognize. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Well, thank you guys again, and we'll have the presentation to you shortly.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next item on the agenda is for discussion only. The City of Stockbridge has a presentation regarding a tax allocation district.
Madam Chair, before Stockbridge sets up, do you all mind getting a picture with the Georgia Tech
Okay.
students, please?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay.
If it was in presentation mode, we're going to have to put it here so we don't have to get swapped. Or if we set up.
So how do we, this one is still up on the screen.
Okay. Good morning, Mr. Fred.
Good morning, Chair. Thank you for giving us the opportunity today to come before you to discuss Stockbridge's tax allocation district number 1. As you know, the voters back in 2020 gave us the authority, the county and the city, the authorization to move forward with tax allocation districts in Henry County and in the municipalities. This will be the first tax allocation district in Henry County and in the municipalities. And with this, we see this as an economic development tool to help us grow our vibrant downtown. As you know, over the last 25 plus years, the city of Stockbridge downtown has, even though we've had public investment, was lacking private investment and growth and development as compared to our sister cities of Locust Grove, Hampton, and McDonough. And we recognize that as though we are growing on the peripheral, we need to address the issue of the heart of the city, which is the downtown, and how do we bring that downtown back in lieu of some of the challenges that we have with the Norfolk Southern Line, as well as Highway 138 bisecting the downtown area. What you will see before you, and what you have before you, is a plan of action through the tax allocation district to allow for us to now utilize, with the assistance of the school board and the county, this economic development tool to bring development, new development, into the downtown area and the surrounding area of downtown Stockbridge. With that, today we have Gary Mangian, advisor with the KB Advisory Group. Also have here Mayor Anthony Ford, Economic Development Director Kim Alance, and I don't know if we have anyone else from the city here. But this is the team here present to you guys and have to answer any questions. I'm going to now turn it over to Gary Mangian to go through the presentation, and then we'll take questions afterwards. Thank you.
Morning, Commissioners. This presentation, I believe, was sent to staff along with the adopted redevelopment plan some time ago. This presentation was actually given at the start of the process. I've been working with the city for probably about at least a year trying to formulate this plan. And we thought it would be somewhat useful to kind of go talk about the process we used as well as the outcomes. Again, this is the first district that's been proposed in Henry County. As a county, you have redevelopment powers also, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if there are projects that arise in the unincorporated county where you're asked to sponsor tax allocation districts and be the redevelopment agency as well. So let's see if we can again, we've been through this process, as Fred said, started in 2020 when voters authorized redevelopment, and we've been working with the city for some time. And at the time we made this presentation, nothing had been approved, and we were just kind of starting the analytical process of what the TAD would look like. Keep going. And trying to get the technology to work. Maybe if you just put the down arrows. Okay. The redevelopment powers law is widely used throughout the state of Georgia. There are at least 80 cities and counties that have adopted redevelopment plans. Although most of the sponsors of these plans are cities, counties have become increasingly involved in redevelopment activity directly and are using this program. The most aggressive in Metro Atlanta are probably Gwinnett County, which has at least 6 tax allocation districts in the unincorporated county, most of them in their business improvement districts. Clayton County has, I believe, 3 or 4 county TADs. And Douglas County recently did their first TAD as a county. You may recall recently Lionsgate Studios announced building a major facility in Douglas County. That is inside their first tax allocation district that they created in 2021. So this program is successful. Not all of these communities have actually implemented their programs, but those that have done have made substantial improvements to their communities using this program. Keep going. What is a TAD? Well, TAD is just a geography of contiguous tax parcels. This is an example of a TAD that was approved in Canton, Georgia. There'll be a slide showing the Stockbridge TAD later on in this presentation, but a TAD can consist of many parcels. I think the largest one is in Augusta, or 1 or 2 parcels. The smallest one is in Varnell, Georgia, which is a city of only 2,400 people. We went through the certification process. The TAD has been certified. It was adopted in late 2022. It has been certified. It is in existence. Again, how TADs work. When they are created, a base digest value is certified by the state. In the Stockbridge case, it's about $35 million. It's not a big TAD. And if the county and the school district agree to pledge their increment, the city, when its millage rate goes into effect, will also pledge its increment, which is the growth in property values within the district over time and the difference in tax collections within that district between the base when the TAD was created in that given year. And each year, if there is increment, the participating jurisdictions work out an agreement to deposit that increment in a TAD special fund managed by the city, and that is used for redevelopment projects. So if no redevelopment occurs and no increment is created, then there is really no cost to the county and school district. But if the city is successful, projects occur, investments are made, then that increment goes to the TAD fund. The taxing jurisdictions also continue to get growth from other sources of revenue outside of the real estate tax. You know that. The purpose of the TAD in Stockbridge is to help the city create a downtown in what is around, the small village of Stockbridge next to City Hall. So we gave them some examples of cities that have done downtown projects with TADs. Duluth, Gainesville, Douglasville, 3 examples that we used. And basically the strategy of the redevelopment plan is to do something like that in Douglasville, and in Stockbridge, that is reflective of the real estate that's in the city. I'd like to talk a little bit about the redevelopment area because it's interesting, having just heard this presentation about homelessness in Henry County. We did an analysis of the geographies surrounding this proposed TAD in Stockbridge and found some interesting things as to why this area would qualify as a redevelopment area under the statute. In order to create a TAD, it has to be inside a redevelopment area, which must satisfy certain definitional requirements that are in the statute. And in this area that we looked at in Stockbridge, the poverty rate among families is 18%. This was based on 2021 data. The median household income in the redevelopment area was 26% less than the countywide median. The housing vacancy rate at the time was higher than the county average. Apartment rents were 13% lower than the county. Retail rents were 22% lower than the county average. We found about 1.5 million square feet of structures within this area that were more than 40 years old. The average taxable value of those structures, again, private taxable properties, was only $51 a square foot. Property values hadn't been keeping up with inflation. In fact, there was evidence that commercial property values in the area had actually declined over the last 20 years in real terms. Population growth was slower than the county average. Housing values were 37% lower than the countywide median housing value of owner-occupied housing. And the housing stock in general was older than the county average. So the area we looked at clearly qualified under the statute, and we wrote the TAD accordingly, the plan accordingly. The TAD itself is a portion of that redevelopment area. And it's created, if you read the redevelopment plan or the executive summary to the plan, it's around a strategy, and it's basically focused on, as Fred said, to create a downtown area and invest resources to basically capitalize on 2 decades of public investment in the area, which conservatively is about $100 million the city's invested over the last 2 to 3 decades. And how do we capitalize on that in terms of getting private investment? This yellow area was our initial study area. There had been a number of plans the city has done over the years, LCI plans and others. So that's kind of the starting point, and we focused on the areas inside the red areas. The tax allocation district is shown here, and again, we tried to take the issues that we saw inside the redevelopment area. We tried to look for opportunities, again, expecting that any public resources generated out of this program would be spent in the downtown, a 27-acre area just to the west of City Hall. But when you look at what surrounds it, there's a surprising amount of vacant land, potential for future redevelopment to occur. And at the end of the day, we settled on this tax allocation district, which is about 500 acres. There's about $35 million in tax digest, which represented about 3% of the city's digest at the time. Since the annexation occurred, that percentage has probably even dropped. It is a fraction of 1% of the county's tax digest that is within this district. There are 323 housing units inside that area, of which 131 are single-family detached homes. The interesting thing about this area is that almost 36% of the single-family homes in this area are rented. They're investor-owned rentals. Their average value is less than $150,000, assessed full value, according to your tax assessor, as of 2022. There was about 600,000 square feet of privately owned taxable commercial space in this area, which is the North Henry Boulevard corridor just east of Walmart and continuing just west of the downtown. It's one of your major commercial corridors. There's only 600,000, I say only 600,000 square feet of existing commercial, but the average value of that commercial is less than $77 a square foot. If you know anything about what it costs to build new commercial development anywhere in Georgia, it's over $200 a square foot. This space is assessed at less than 76. The average age of your housing stock is 55 years. The average age of the commercial stock is 50 years. And, you know, again, value growth has not been keeping up with inflation. This has probably been a net drain on the county's tax base over time, not a contributor. And the thought is, if nothing is done to change the status quo, those trends are likely to continue long term. If you look at, again, the area around City Hall is where the city has assembled a lot of property over the years. That's where this plan is going to concentrate. The main goal of the plan is to get private investment to occur, starting with parcels the city currently owns and controls. That's the plan. That area inside that circle has a current tax digest of less than $6 million. We believe that could grow to $80 to $90 million if this plan is implemented and resources are invested to make that happen. The other circles around that to the east and west are other areas. You can tell from the tax parcels that they're largely undeveloped. And when you draw TAD boundaries, what you try to do is include areas where you want to have publicly incentivized projects. You also want to include areas that are going to benefit from that investment and increase in value, as well as include other parcels where private investment could occur in the future, and the city may or may not decide to incentivize projects in those areas as well. There's well over 100 acres of parcels that are still vacant, again, within a very short distance of City Hall in Stockbridge, both north and south of the North Henry Boulevard corridor. And we can go through the rest, just bypass the rest of this. I'll just talk briefly about the consent process. The city has not made a specific proposal yet to the county and school board in terms of consent. That would be the next step. If you are willing to consider consenting to this TAD, I just point out a couple of things. If you consent, that the county's only liability, if it chooses to consent to this TAD, is to pledge your increment every year, whatever that increment is over the life of the TAD. If the city issues bonds, if the city makes any investments of TAD funds, you are not liable or responsible for any of those decisions. Your only role in this is to contribute increment on an annual basis. You can accomplish this by either just approving a consent resolution, which basically mimics the city's consent resolution when they form the TAD, and some counties have had a more formalized process of attaching an intergovernmental agreement with that consent resolution. And the terms of that agreement could be subject to negotiation. Typically, the entity sponsoring the TAD creates a first draft, and there can be discussions with the county in terms of specific terms. And typically, agreements that are approved with the county are mimicked with the Board of Education if they choose to consent. So getting your approval to participate in this TAD at some level is integral to the city being able to approach the Board of Education and ask for a similar arrangement. In terms of what these agreements typically contain, they usually talk about the term of the city's commitment, the county's commitment to the TAD. There are typically annual reporting requirements that you want to know what happens to your increment, so there are typically reporting requirements. Sometimes there are other conditions on what county increment can be used for. Sometimes that's an issue, sometimes it isn't. And there can be other terms, conditions, procedures that you may want to impose. The important thing is if you do consent, that you give the city enough flexibility that they have the ability to make something successful happen. We have seen cases where county agreements have been so restrictive that the outcome has been the city can't use the program. So we hope that there are no unreasonable terms and conditions attached. So that's basically where we are. I think the city would like to go to the next step and actually talk about an agreement with you.
Yes, Chair, and I'm going to close with this old adage. Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results is called insanity. Our goal is to do something different and expect a different outcome. Because we've been at this, the city's been at this for so long and has gained absolutely nothing. The use of this tool helps us to change the narrative and change the direction in which downtown Stockbridge grows and develop and become that thriving economic engine that it should be. And that benefits all. Employment, sales tax, growth for new population, that helps us all. So thank you. I don't know if the mayor wants to say anything in closing, and then we'll take questions.
Chair Harrell, Board of Directors, Board of Commissioners, but Mayor Ford obviously here. But we're looking for our future development of our community, and this will be a helpful tool for us to do so. And we want to be a progressive city and thrive. And this will help us in this process, and it'll help the overall county aspect as well. So we look for your support and to establish this agreement and be part of the successful process for the city in the future. Appreciate your concern and any further questions you may have and your support. Thank you.
Are there any questions from the board? Commissioner Wilson.
So go back to your TAD district map. You said that around the City Hall area downtown was going to be one of the first things that was going to be redeveloped? Is that what I heard?
Yes, that's the primary goal of the plan, is to make that happen.
So what are those development plans? Are they looking at putting businesses? Are they looking at putting multifamily? What does that look like?
Yeah, unfortunately, we don't have an image of the downtown plan in this presentation, but there is one in the redevelopment plan. Tunnell, Spangler, and Walsh has done another update of what's possible in downtown Stockbridge in terms of physical development on the parcels the city currently owns and controls. And it's about 75,000 square feet of commercial and office space and about 200 apartment units is physically possible in the downtown, and that can continue to evolve. But that is the plan, is to try to, these funds would be used to assist developers in making those projects feasible. There are some infrastructure issues downtown that this TAD could help support financially, And, being the first development in this area, there will be some risk in terms of, being able to financially support the kind of investment the city's looking for. So that's what the city would use TAD's funds for. This is an example of things that have been done in downtown Gainesville. Gainesville's hit a lot of singles, to use an analogy, over the last 20 years. Just providing incentives to small projects. They've done about 10 to 15 projects over time. Again, just contributing TAD funds on a pay-as-you-go basis to these projects. And every one they've done, each succeeding one has gotten bigger and bigger. And they've succeeded in attracting $150 million of investment to downtown Gainesville over the last 15 years. So on a smaller scale, that's what we're hoping to accomplish in Stockbridge.
So what's the timeline of getting this started and completion? Do y'all have that yet?
So in essence, the TAD itself is usually somewhere between 20 and 30 years. It can vary depending on obviously the conditions in which we bond finance any improvements that we need to do as part of the development project. But there is interest. We've been shopping the downtown area to developers, and we'll be putting out an RFP for development partners, especially on the 3-acre site across from City Hall. And then there's some other properties that we own downtown that we want to be incentivizing as well. So our goal is to get this moving in earnest, obviously. I've been a resident here for 24 years, and downtown has looked the same, and that was the conversation we had with the school board, that, for long-term residents here, nothing's changed. So our goal is to try to get things moving in earnest once we get approval.
So this area right here is not going to take 20 or 30 years, right? I mean, is that?
So what typically happens is if a developer comes in and, let's say, for instance, they want to build a 4- or 5-story mixed-use development. Well, obviously, if you're familiar with our downtown, we can't park all those people, which is going to be potentially retail, commercial on the lower floors and residential above. There would be a need for a parking deck. Right? So that would be part of what we would probably bond finance, either that or any infrastructure in terms of water sewer improvements to handle the growth and development downtown. Those funds would be used for those. So once that comes in, if we bond finance, we can do a 20-25-year bond on those infrastructure costs to make them happen immediately with the development. That's typically how it works.
So you mentioned the city millage rate. When was y'all going to implement that? That way you talked about that y'all would participate in this as well. So when would that be?
Well, that's a discussion that's about to happen soon with City Council. It hasn't happened as yet, outside of just anecdotal conversations, but that's something that's going to be presented to Council fairly soon.
So during this process, will y'all be offering tax abatements through this program?
No, tax abatements work counterintuitively to tax allocation districts. The goal is to get everybody paying full taxes and spending that increment in the district for public improvements or direct incentives to projects. So there's no tax abatements. Absent of a TAD, to the extent the city has the ability to do that, they could do tax abatements. But the goal would be to create revenue. Just to answer your question a little bit more, how this process works, the city created the TAD at the end of last year. The next step in the process is to go through the consent process and try to get the county and school board to participate at some level, or say no if that's your answer, in the first half of this year. Once that's done, once the city makes its decisions regarding its millage rate, then you kind of know what the city can offer in terms of incentives. Until agreements are in place, you can't run the math. You can't tell anything to developers in terms of how we can make this work, how we can finance it, how we can implement this plan. So that's the next step. That's important. Assuming that happens this year, around the end of the year, the city will be in a better position to actually negotiate with development partners, and we would hope that as early as 2024, city would be able to enter into agreements to basically provide its property for private sector development. So hopefully, the short answer is, hopefully next year we could start this process and have things under construction maybe in 2025.
Okay, my last question. So you're asking for us to freeze assessments on these properties within the district, right?
Yes.
And y'all are asking for 100% of the assessment values over that for the next 30 years, correct?
Yes, or until the TAD is dissolved, whichever occurs first, which can be less than 30 years.
So 100% over the assessment value that's frozen for 30 years.
Yes.
That's what I'm reading, correct?
That'd be, yeah, the worst case, I guess, from your perspective, yes.
Okay, that's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Done? Commissioner Angler?
Johnny answered all the questions, or got those answered that I had, sure. So I appreciate that. Thank you, Commissioner Wilson.
Commissioner Lewis?
I do have a couple questions. So I know you said you want to spur business and economic development. So preliminary discussions, what is your vision of what that's going to look like? So I'm looking at what Gainesville has here, and I see like a multifamily high rise. So what type of businesses will you try to recruit, and what is your vision of what downtown Stockbridge is going to look like?
Our vision is almost akin to what you see there, is to look at, especially on the properties we own, something that multi-story mixed-use development, where we could have residents downtown living, thriving. We're less than a quarter mile from the city park, right across the street from the city amphitheater and what's going on there, our trail system. So this would be a cool place for folks to live, work, and play. And so that's part of it, getting people to move into the downtown area, boost obviously the income levels around there, provide shopping opportunities, restaurant opportunities. Because right now, people want to come to Stockbridge and say, I want to open a business. They have only 7 stores in the downtown, 4 storefronts. That's it. That is it. And all of them are owned. So where would I put this person who wants to be an entrepreneur and open a restaurant? I have nowhere to put them, right? This gives us the opportunity to build new space, to bring new businesses downtown, right? This is going to provide opportunities and employment opportunities for our residents, right? Yes, we're asking to give up that property tax, freeze that property tax, but guess what's not frozen? Sales tax. That still comes to the school board, that still comes to the county, it still comes to the city, right? And any residual effect from that is that person who's now employed, they're going to shop at the Walmart. So not on top of just what that location is doing, what are those people who now have jobs are doing in terms of what they're spending, right? And being able to provide those job opportunities, because guess what? As much as a lot of us would like to be Beverly Hills, the people who are working in those stores have to live somewhere, to have an employment opportunity somewhere. And this helps provide that for the downtown area. And I'll give you an example, Commissioner Wilson. The last city I worked in, city of East Point. If you're familiar with Camp Creek Marketplace, right there on 285 and Camp Creek Parkway, used to be an old rock bed. The city stepped out on the ledge. Fulton County gave authority for full use of their tax increment. School board did the same. They came in and they built that major shopping center on that old rock outcropping. That TAD was the highest performing TAD, even outperforming Atlantic, as most people know, Atlantic Station, right? It paid off the bonds 6 years early. So yes, it had a 25-year life, but it did not actually last that long, right? That TAD is now being dissolved, but it started in 2000, right? I give you the history, and I did this with the school board. If you close your eyes, if you're a long-term resident in Henry County, and I ask you to close your eyes and envision downtown Stockbridge in 1980, and then I ask you to fast forward to 2020, what's changed? So we could take the next 30 years and see the same thing, unless we take it on, go out on a ledge and do something different and expect a different outcome.
Commissioner Thomas, did you have any questions?
Yes, I have one question, Madam Chair. I want to know, if this TAD is not approved, what other options have they considered?
Well, if the county and school board don't consent, then this tool is pretty much worthless. So my guess is that the other alternatives would be to use their redevelopment agencies and do leasehold interest agreements and tax abatement programs to accomplish similar objectives. The most likely outcome is that very little would happen because the city's capacity to do this type of thing without a TAD is very limited, but those would be the options. I would say that other communities have gone that route where their county and school districts have not been supportive. There's been some successes, some failures. Dorville has gone that route. Other communities have, but generally, tax increment financing has only worked inside of these tax allocation districts.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Thomas.
After everybody's done.
Go ahead.
So I just have one comment. Thank y'all for your presentation, but I find it very interesting that we all receive an email this morning from a city council person in Stockbridge asking us to roll back our county millage rate, and yet y'all are standing before us asking for a TAD. That's very conflicting.
Sure. Right, and we won't go into the loss and other things that you all are bringing against us. You want us to, we talk about working together in collaboration. We agreed to keep our loss at the same rate that it was, and now you want to come back and bring attorneys in and, ask for more, when I think that that's something you should take up with the cities. And then you want to ask us to do this for you, and then you want to ask us to roll our millage rate back. So we all got that same email this morning, and it's really kind of disheartening that we talk about working together, but it is always seems to be an attack against the county. And, I don't see anybody asking the school board to roll their millage rate back. A lot of the reason why taxes are high is because of the increase of the school board. It has nothing to do with the county. Nothing whatsoever. It's the school board's taxes that have increased, not ours.
Madam Chair, our city manager is going to speak to you in just a second. And listen, commissioners, we had no idea that you received something until just now. And whatever you received was unauthorized. We have a presentation here. Any individuals from the council had more enough the opportunity to be right here for this presentation and knew that it was happening. I'm sorry that you received that. I haven't received anything like that. I haven't seen my email, but I'm pretty sure that I hadn't gotten it.
I will forward it to you, Mayor Ford.
Okay, well, it was unauthorized. It was not what was necessary. What the presentation is what it is. In this aspect, that's the thought process in which we are going forward on. It was totally unauthorized, and it wasn't proper. So I'm sorry that you all received that. That's all I can really say right now. It's just that we've come to you with open hands and ask for your assistance to help grow our city and have a vibrant future for our city and our downtown. That is what this process is about. So I'm sorry that you received some information that we were not aware of. Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
Chair, Mr. England, so two different things. Loss is this. This is obviously more of an economic development tool that
but
doesn't.
It impacts our bottom line. It impacts our bottom line. Everything impacts our bottom line.
Yes, ma'am. And what I can say is, and I think the consultant was quite clear that the district that we chose is not a district that's been increasing in terms of its tax value. It's actually been declining in reference to in comparison to the rest of the county. And the loss is a total separate situation. Obviously, we'll be discussing that, but that was generated by the fact that voters chose to approve the referendum to move into the city from the county, and based on state law, not what the city wanted to do, but that's based on state law, written in state law, that if the city's population grows through an annexation of more than 15%, that triggers this action. So that's not of our making per se. That's what the state law states, and that's the process that we have to go through and we're going through, which is separate and not germane to this, right? This, what we see here, Chairman, is a win-win for everybody. As I stated before, jobs, sales tax, future growth. The properties that we're envisioning growth and development on this part of this TAD are non-taxable city properties. They're not generating anything for anybody. Not you, not us, not the school board. If we incentivize $100 million development on any of those parcels, yes, at some point you're going to see sales tax from those, residual sales tax from the people that live there, but at some point, just as in East Point and just as in the city of Atlanta, once those development is built and their taxes, the bonds are paid off, that comes to the city. That money has never been there for any of us, right? If we continue to do the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result, we all gonna go crazy. We have to step out and do something totally different and expect a different outcome, right? And this is why the city is here today, to talk about this economic development tool that does not only benefit the city, it benefits the county, right? Because I go to McDonough to enjoy downtown. I go to get ice cream in Hampton or get stuff in Hampton. I go down to Locust Grove and shop down there at the barbecue shop. I'm a resident of Henry County. I don't just stay in Stockbridge. My money is spent throughout the county.
Just to clarify an earlier question in terms of how this mechanism works, which may be helpful. The only thing that's frozen inside the TAD is the base digest. In the future, the digest will increase, it will decrease in recessions. Millage rates can go up, they can go down. You have multiple millage rates in the county. I think there's a general fund, fire district, there may be others I don't know about. You can pledge all of your millage, you can pledge just the general fund. That's a subject we can talk about. And what happens every year in the future is that taxes will be county taxes will be collected in this district, whatever those are. There'll be resident homestead exemptions; those will be deducted. But there will be an aggregate amount of county taxes, real estate taxes collected. The TAD formula is each year a different percentage of that is calculated based on the incremental growth, so that the county keeps the percentage that was related to the base digest. The rest of that percentage goes to the tax allocation district. So if millage rates go down in the future, there's less revenue collected. The percentage of the county contribution fluctuates with those percentages. And then just the last point, the only thing the city has pledged to the TAD and would ask the county and school district to pledge is the real estate tax. Commercial personal property taxes would be exempt, and that digest would be exempt from the TAD. In Henry County, that's about 24% of your total tax digest is related to commercial and industrial personal property. The commercial sector is about that as well. So there will be more revenue generated out of the district for the county as well as the city. And concerns about how much and all of that, that's subject to negotiation in the intergovernmental agreement. And we hope that there would be, some back and forth in negotiations, and ultimately you can work out an agreement that's acceptable to both parties and most importantly enables this to be successful. Because if it isn't successful, there is no increment. Nobody loses any money because there's none available. The status quo, as Frederick said, the status quo condition over the last 2 decades has not been positive for Henry County or the city. And if that continues, there'll be an opportunity cost of doing nothing.
Commissioner Wilson.
So we're talking about frozen assessments. Are you looking at freezing the assessments from 2022 or freezing the assessments from the current we just received in 2023? Which
the base digest of the district was set as of the end of 2022 at $35 million.
So basically, if we agree to this, the assessments that we increased in this tax year, would that affect our budget at all if we'd agree to this?
So if I understand correctly, it would be based on the 2022 assessments, not
Right,
what we just received.
But if we freeze it at 22, and we're basing our budget on 23, so that means our budget will be affected this year if we agree to what they're asking for 22.
Well, I think what we need to know better are a couple of things. What the total cost, what this agreement looks like. Because right now, we're discussing a vision, but we don't have a concept to even know what we're talking about. And so I think for us, we've identified the area, but I think I heard Mr. Gartner say a parking deck. And so we need to know what are the items that they're looking, what the costs will be. And I think your question regarding the property tax for the city is going to be a lot of this conversation. Because if you're asking the county to consent, we need to know what we're consenting to. I know the consultant mentioned the process of the city creating the TAD and then the consent process. I would caution against the board proceeding with consenting until we know what that dollar amount is going to be. Because we've talked about, and I know each of the board members have looked at the presentation that the city has provided, but there's still been a lot of questions in terms of, is this going to be a 30-year? Is this going to be a 20-year? Is this going to be a 15-year? If the city bonds and the development doesn't occur, who does that debt fall on? If the city does or does not implement a property tax, because that will take a vote amongst their council to agree to that. So what all those unknowns need to be known. You are correct in that our property taxes counts towards our revenue. So any revenues that we're receiving, it's based on whatever that millage rate is for those city residents who pay for those services that are provided countywide. So we will have to make some decisions on whether we want that general fund millage rate to be accounted for, if we want it to be for fire services. There are a lot of pieces to it. I would ask that we do get from the city what the proposal is so that we can then talk to the board about what that total impact would be. Because I think I heard the consultant say 35 million, but I don't think that's going to be based on the assessments that we just received yesterday or day before yesterday.
Okay, thank you.
Just to clarify again, the county tax assessor, now that the TAD has been created, the county tax assessor will create a digest for the TAD each year, including 2023. I would assume that information will become available fairly soon, probably before you hopefully sign an intergovernmental agreement to implement this. So you should know, again, probably within the next 60 days, what the tax digest, the 2023 tax digest is in the TAD. I would be very, very, very surprised if it goes up significantly. It may be a loss of county revenues of $4,000 or $5,000, maybe. And again, I don't know what property values, if they're continuing to go up. There was a significant increase in a lot of counties in 2022. But usually, the first 5 years of a tax allocation district, before redevelopment actually happens and people start investing in buildings, digest growth in this area has been negative in real terms for the last 25 years. I don't think it's going to be a big cost, if any, to the county in 2023 or for the next 5 years. But again, it's negotiation is an important part of this. We need to get a document in front of you so that you can talk about it, negotiate with the city on terms, and hopefully at the end of the day we can come out with something that enables the city to implement something positive in this district. And again, virtually every county in the metro has at least some TADs within their districts. Most of the urbanized counties in Georgia have tax allocation districts. So there are plenty of models that we can use to present to you.
Commissioner Thomas.
Yes, Madam Chair. My question is, the city does not need our involvement or endorsement to create their own property tax. Why are they going for a TAD and not a property tax? And what are the numbers that they're using to justify that? How much money would they bring in on a property tax versus a TAD? So the question is, have they done the work to determine which is more profitable? What is that number? And what's the reason not going forth with the property tax?
You want to answer that? I don't know how to answer that. Well, the redevelopment plan has an assumption that there will be a city property tax. If you choose to, you can include in the intergovernmental agreement that unless the city has a property tax, you won't consent, or that's certainly a negotiating item. The millage rate that the county pledges, whether it's includes the fire or general fund or whatever, that's another negotiating point. But the redevelopment plan does anticipate that at some point in time in the near future, the city will have a millage rate. We didn't have the ability to know what that would be, but again, tax increment financing doesn't work unless you have a property tax. So it's in this. There has to be a mechanism for that. Otherwise, there's no revenue, and it's not worth the effort.
Commissioner Thomas.
Again, Madam Chair, if I will, he stated that we can put that in our agreement as part of our request. I don't think that should be an onus on the county to say that the city must have a property tax. I think the city needs to step up on their own and make their own decision, so they cannot say we required it. So again, what are those numbers that you can produce by having your own property tax, and what is your plan to make that happen first?
Commissioner Thomas, I'll give an example here, right? So right now there are 2 cities in Henry County that don't have a millage rate of their own. Even if they impose a millage rate, the TIDE, in terms of how the TIDE functions from an economic development sense and being able to leverage the increment to foster new development through investments in those developments, even if we had a millage rate, it still would not be enough to make a project, a multi-million-dollar project, happen. And I give an example. Once again, last job I had, there are 2 TIDEs in East Point. There's the Camp Creek Market TIDE, and there's the downtown TIDE. That goes on Cleveland Avenue from the Walmart all the way down. School board did not consent, county consented, and even with the city and the county school taxes, we still weren't able to leverage enough to make a project in the downtown area happen. Thankfully, before I left, the school board actually consented on a project-by-project basis to make that TIDE worthwhile. The TIDE, as it's formulated in Georgia, anticipates the city, even if the city had a millage rate, it still anticipate that the millage from the city, or the increments from the city, the increment from the county, and the increment from the school board would make a project more viable than if it was just a city tax abatement using to make that happen. It just won't work from that standpoint. And that's what the consultant was saying, that we would have to try some other type of method to make it happen. But I go back and recognize the voters obviously gave us the authority to do this type of project, right? The 2020 was the second time Henry County actually tried this. I don't know if most folks are familiar, but the first time we actually had a TIDE referendum on the ballot, it failed. Back in between 2008 2010, it failed. It was done by the Development Authority, right? But as Henry grew and became more urbanized, people obviously see the need that there are some areas that do need to be redeveloped, and this tool has become necessary for us in the city. But to answer your question, if the city imposes a millage rate, regardless of what that is, even if we stave off that increment, it won't be enough to subsidize a multi-million-dollar development project. It just won't.
Any other questions, Commissioner Thomas?
I heard his explanation. Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to see the numbers. Just like they've allocated numbers on what this tab would do, we need real numbers as to what other taxes can do that they can explore. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments from the board? Thank you for your presentation, and Sherry, what is next steps?
So that was my question. So we were thinking the same thing. In terms of the city of Stockbridge, I think we are waiting to receive the information from them. What I've heard from Commissioner Thomas is that she wants more concrete numbers. I think Commissioner Wilson has asked for what's going to occur on the property or what you're looking to do so that we'll have a better idea. And I think a conceptual or at least a draft document for us to start reviewing so that I can start having conversations with the board. I would ask, and this is more for Mr. Gardner, I know that you mentioned that the initial first phase would be city-owned parcels. So my question would be, and you don't have to answer today, you can just follow back up with me, has there been any conversation with private developers, since the city owns those parcels outside of creating a TAD, has there been any effort made to maybe enter into some public-private partnerships on those city-owned parcels only in the event that you don't get the support from the Board of Commissioners and or the Board of Education?
I can answer that for sure. Past administrations, I think, have attempted to elicit private development in the downtown area, and as you guys can drive around downtown Stockbridge, it don't exist. It didn't happen.
So I just have one follow-up question to your question, Sherry. I know that you said the concentration would be on the property that you all own, but the TAD in general expands beyond that. So say, for example, you got to vote for the TAD. What if you had someone that come in and wanted to develop on the other parcels and not necessarily on the what the city has in place? Would you all be ready to? Are you looking at doing this TAD in phases, or are you looking at when you put it out, you're going to put the complete plan out? I guess, you know,
right.
I'm trying to get some idea of a timeline.
Very good question, Chairman. Obviously, yes, our focus is in the core downtown area. That's our focus area one. If a development, for instance, came in on a piece of property, and I'll give an example. Let's say this tract of vacant property right there. You know, I think part of what Gary was saying is, you know, the county can do, and this is an example, I think we, hearing the questions, rather than a blanket yes to our increment, it can be, hey, we want to evaluate on a project by project basis to make sure that it actually makes sense for us to use our increment there, right? I think that's what I'm hearing, that yes, there's an opportunity for us to use it there. Obviously, any development that go there, we want to make sure that one, it's not going to be impactful on the school system, and if it is, we wouldn't probably want to participate because we know that the school board probably won't participate if it's going to add more additional kids to their school. That, our hope is on those peripheral of the TAD that those development happen by themselves, right? And become those increments that didn't generate from that becomes monies that we can use to foster the development in the core area. That's the hope. Our goals, try not to incentivize those, that those would just take their own market forces would drive those development there. But if it does, obviously, I would think that it would make sense for us to bring that back to say, hey, we have a small Atlantic station that want to go on this 12 or 14 or 15 acre tract. What does the county see? What does the school board see? And if you say yes, then we can use those increments. But to say in a blanket situation like that, no. I would want to have us bring that as part of a negotiated process. So, in hearing what I'm hearing, the goal is we would, one, bring something conceptual as to what we want to see. Two, bring some numbers as to if that development came before you, what does it look like in terms of what you guys would be participating in if this project was worth X amount of dollars. And then obviously, three, what skin in the game that the city has to play in it. And we'll do that as part of, and then a blanket negotiation document that we can just start from and form to say, hey, we'll participate, but it might be on a project by project basis rather than a blanket. That's kind of the conversations I had with the school superintendent when I met with them. And we gave the examples of other jurisdictions that actually do that. That way it's not a blanket no and it's not a blanket yes. if we think that the project makes sense to you guys, makes sense to us, we would consent and then move forward from there. But we'll bring all of those stuff back to you and the staff, and then go from there, and then hopefully really be able to move forward with this, and then hopefully everybody will see something great come out of the ground that's beneficial for everybody.
Okay. Thank you so much for the presentation.
Thank you, Commissioners. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioners, we appreciate the time and effort and look forward to a bright future together. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Move forward with the consent agenda. We have our county manager to please come forward.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the board. This is your consent agenda for Tuesday, May 2nd, 9 a.m. Under Animal Control, we have a resolution of the Board of Commissioners approving bid number 23-45 for the purchase of one Blue Star 100 kW diesel generator from Power and Energy Services, Inc. in the amount of $81,485, which is necessary to care for animals and county employees when a power outage occurs. ARPA funding will be utilized for this purchase. Under capital projects, we have a resolution of the Board of Commissioners awarding a contract for design build services for the renovation of an existing county-owned facility located in District 4, RFP number 23-35 to J.R. Bowman Construction Company in the amount of $374,425. Under Parks and Rec, we have a resolution of the Henry County Board of Commissioners accepting the allocation for the Georgia Recreation and Parks Association Building Opportunities in Out-of-School Time Boost Grants Program awarded to Henry County Parks and Recreation Department in the amount of $170,000. Under the Police Department, we have a resolution declaring items listed on Exhibit A as surplus and authorizing disposition of said items through the Purchasing Department. Under SPLOST, we have a resolution of the Board of Commissioners approving a Georgia Power lighting proposal and utility agreement for parking lot and walking trail lighting at Mickey D. Cochran Park in District 4 in the amount of $115,546 utilizing SPLOST 5 funds, Program SP 5401. We also have a resolution of the Board of Commissioners approving a budget amendment in the amount of $830,892 and bid award for construction of Bridges Road at Willow Lane intersection improvement to Backbone Infrastructure LLC in the amount of $2,067,501.60. And then finally, under SPLOST, we have a resolution of the Board of Commissioners approving a budget amendment in the amount of $625,569 and bid award for construction of Selfridge Road, SPLOST 4 Transportation Improvement Project to McLeroy, Inc. in the amount of $1,946,257.96. Madam Chair, this ends the consent agenda.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the board regarding the consent agenda? Commissioner Thomas, you have any questions?
No question.
No questions, okay. All right. Commissioner Wilson.
Can you identify the county property under capital project for renovation?
No.
So,
okay.
Thank you.
Okay. On SPLOST.
We can take a break and.
No, I'm familiar.
Okay. Okay.
I just want to make sure that.
Okay.
When you said no, I
okay.
understand. Under SPLOST, on the item B, is that over? Did we add something, or is that something that was? The cost was, there's two of them, B and C. Did we add something to the project, or did something because the cost come in higher than what was projected?
Good morning, Chair and Commissioner. We didn't add anything, Commissioner. It's just the cost of materials has gone up.
All right, thank you. That's all I have.
And Rocky, before you go, one question from Commissioner Lewis.
Yes, sir. I just had a question. What exactly is the intersection improvement, Bridges at Willow?
So we're going to be doing a roundabout.
Roundabout,
at the location.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Any other questions? Hearing none, can I get a motion to approve? Got a motion from Commissioner Wilson.
Second.
Second from both my commissioners here. There's no further discussion. All in favor? Commissioner Thomas?
Thank you.
Now we move to the regular agenda, financial services. This is a public hearing regarding the 2024 proposed budget. To participate in the public hearing, sign up via email required by 12 p.m. on May 1st to our county clerk, Stephanie Braun. The presenter is Bonita.
So, Madam Chair, you're going to have two presentations. Bernita's going to start the budget, and then Angie Sorrow is going to handle the capital.
Okay.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, Commissioners, and Henry County community. My name is Bernita Campbell. I'm the Budget Director for Henry County. Today is the first of two public hearings for our FY24 budget. I will cover the operating budget. Once I conclude, Angie Sorrow will then present the capital budget. Let's begin with this year's proposed budget philosophy. We wanted to maintain the current millage rate of 12.733 mills, ensure our employees' compensation is market competitive, and maintain employee benefits at no additional cost to the employees. Advance the board's priorities and strategic partnerships with organizations doing important work throughout the Henry County community. Lastly, we wanted to fund essentials to maintain county services at current operating levels. Our executive summary. The proposed FY24 operating budget is $232,011,000, which is up 7% or $15.1 million over last year's budget of $216.9 million. The main drivers of this year's increase are continued growth in our property taxes. The current projections received from our tax assessor indicate an approximate 14% year-over-year growth. However, we are conservatively budgeting at 9% increase. The growth is due to both real and inflationary growth. We are also projecting a 3% growth in our sales tax revenue. Some of the major items that are included in this year's budget, so for our employees, the county's greatest asset, we have included funding for the class and comp implementation at a $10.3 million cost. Dollars have also been set aside to fund our pension and insurance increases of $2.8 million. We've included departmental funding, where we've set aside dollars for county-wide software maintenance contracts, $660,000, and funds for elections and voter registration, $306,000. Under public safety, we have the medical and food contract increases for the jail at $1.8 million and EMA disaster response at $134,000. For our judicial services cluster, we have court reporter fee increases of $194,000, state employee contract increases for those working in the public defender's office, $273,000, and we have judicial officials county supplement increases of $155,000. Finally included in this budget is for capital funding. This budget includes $10 million, which is being set aside from fund balance to fund FY24 capital expenditures. This slide shows how the $232 million proposed budget is split between each cluster and the related departments that fall under each. The cluster representing the biggest share of the budgeted expenditures is public safety, budgeted at an overall $117 million, or 51% of the total operating budget. The next slide includes additional graphical representations of the budget breakdown. The slide on the left shows percentage-wise how the proposed budget is split by cluster. The slide on the right breaks down how the $232 million proposed budget is allocated based on expenditure type. You will note that the bulk of the budget, or 78%, is spent on salaries and benefits for employees who are providing services to Henry County residents. The next largest category is other at 12%, which includes repairs and maintenance of government facilities, utilities, printing and binding, dues, and other fees. In compiling this year's budget and developing a recommendation for the board, we made sure that the proposed budget aligned with our 5 pillars of excellence. Fiscal stewardship. The budget is based on projected revenues. We are not using fund balance to subsidize the current budget. We are sustaining current spending levels without increases to taxes or jeopardizing the government's solvency. We are maintaining a healthy fund balance for future one-time expenses, capital projects, and catastrophic events. Integrity. We are managing our current resources with wisdom and planning for future growth by being moral, ethical, and prudent in our financial decision-making. Service. We made sure that each county department and agency had adequate funding and that they were equipped to carry out the assigned duties and provide the services that Henry County residents and visitors expect. Accountability. We set a realistic operating budget for each county department, one that we believe can reasonably be achieved and still provide the departments with the resources needed to effectively function and provide services. Finally, this budget is collaborative. We have key partnerships with each internal department and select outside agencies, all who are working to address the needs of Henry County citizens. Shown here is our FY24 proposed budget summary for the general fund. This is a comparative of what the original requests were versus the proposed budget. As you can see in the left column under original requests, our original request far exceeded our funding capabilities of $232 million. This difference required that we evaluate each and every request and prioritize accordingly. While not all requests were able to be honored at this time, we have committed to revisiting those requests later in FY24 to determine if funding is available. Looking at the right column, you will note that projected revenues and expenditures are balanced, both at $232 million, and we are able to do this without utilizing fund balance. Here's the summary of the proposed budget for all funds for FY24. I know it is small on the screen, however, this is included in your packets for review at a later time. Next steps. So with this being the first public hearing of 2, no action is required by the board today. We will hold the second and final public hearing and subsequent adoption of the FY24 budget on May 16th, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. At this time, the board will be asked to take a vote to adopt the budget. This concludes my presentation on the operating budget. Are there any questions from the board?
Come on, Angie.
Okay, thank you. Madam Chair, before Ms. Sorrow presents, let's go ahead and call for the public hearing because we do have to have that for the budget,
Okay,
and then
for
we'll
the
let her
budget.
do the
Okay,
capital
all right.
presentation.
Okay, so Stephanie, did you have anyone sign up?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so no one signed up.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, Board of Commissioners. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to come before you today to present the FY24 Capital Improvement Program and as well as the 5-year capital plan. As you know, the board approved the first CIP plan back in 2020, where we issued bonds for $20 million, and the second funding that the board graciously gave us was $20 million out of fund balance. With those funds, we were able to have a vehicle replacement plan, remodel the DOT crew building, public safety vehicles, fire apparatus, ambulance replacements, building roofs, repairs, purchasing of buildings for the election Department, airport taxiway grant match. I could go on and on of opportunities that we have been able to fund with the capital replacement plan. As you see here before you, the FY23 $20 million CIP plan is $20 million. We have paid and committed means has come before you, the board, that has approved these projects in the amount of $15,390 million, with a balance of $4.9 million left. What we are proposing to do is take this $4 million for our FY24 proposed capital plan. Our next column, our total department requests came in at $125 million. Though out of that request, we had about $80 to $90 million worth of building requests. So the capital committee consists of several people here at the county, and we had to look at what the county's priorities were, as well as the department priority, and also, most importantly, the funding availability that we have. So our proposed capital plan is $18,104,000. Out of that, it includes $500,000 for technology, $6 million for facilities replacement, maintenance, a fire burn building, vehicle and machinery replacement plan of $8.6 million, and that will give us $4 million available cash. We're going to transfer in the $10 million that Ms. Bernita wants to approve in the budget, and then $4 million impact fees, and then $69 million left in the COPS plan. That will give us a total balance of $18,104,170 balanced budget. Our next will be our 5-year capital plan. As you know, we've come before you and approved a 5-year plan. Every year we will come before you. As 1 year falls off, we will be asking for a new year to be added on. Why is this not updated? Okay, the 5-year plan is not on this presentation, so let me put it on the overhead.
And it should be in your package, Commissioners.
Can we switch to the overhead, please? And again, these are small numbers as well. Do you want to just use the overhead, or you want me to? Okay.
Packet.
Okay. So, as you see, you have, we're dropping off FY23, adding 24 and 28. You see the numbers that will go from 18 million to 97 million for FY25. 26 will be 54 million. 27 will be 53 million, and 28 will be 56 million, with a total of $281 million worth of capital projects. As you see over on the right-hand side is our funding sources, and we have FY20, 24 balanced, 25, 26, 27, and 28. Those projects are mainly the buildings that I just spoke of, and those projects funding is yet to be determined, and we will bring that funding source back at a later date. So I'm not asking for an approval for this plan today, but on the second meeting in May, I would like to ask for approval for the 5-year plan.
So I do have some questions.
Okay.
And I just want to make sure that it's included in this current plan.
Okay.
There has been a lot of conversation about our need for a new fire or new public safety facility. So I'm assuming that under fire, that is inclusive of what is needed for the fire department?
So there were I'll come up. Let me come up
Okay,
real quick.
please.
I got my little cheat sheet here. Okay. So under fiscal year 25, we do have under the fire department $38,578,000 chair that has been included. For this current fiscal year, which we're getting ready to approve, we are allocating the burn building, which I believe was a high priority for the fire chief. I'm glad you asked that question because he has requested some meetings with the board to just kind of talk through not having that burn building, the impact on our ISO rating. So your timing for that question was perfect. But as the list for FY24, we are recommending funding for the burn building.
Okay. And so what about, I know we had talked about a public safety training facility. Is that incorporated in this particular plan as well?
So we have it in multiple sources, Chair, because the public safety facility will include our 911, EMA, and some fire services and some police services. So there are multiple funding sources. We do have some allocated under our E911 funds, and then we will have other funding allocated under EMA. We have funding allocated for that in subsequent years. The other thing is, and I don't know if you want me to release it, but I know that you had been successful in talking with some of our senators, and you have secured some additional funding from Senator Ossoff's office for the public safety facility. So thank you for that, because that is also an additional funding source that will go towards that. I think what we heard during the board retreat is that you all wanted us to prioritize a lot of our public safety needs, but also taking care of our facilities here. So that is what this current capital FY24 list will include. A lot of those items that have just been lingering that we've got to get approved.
Okay. And then as we continue to talk about public safety, there is, I know, a great need for addition to our jail facility. And so does that include the 2 pods that we have been in discussion about, as well as our judicial center, our courthouse?
So the judicial center is listed, Chair, under FY25. So we do have funding for 25 through 28 for the judicial center. Keep in mind, we also, hold on, let me look at my other list. Under the sheriff's office, we also have funding allocated there as well. Now, there are multiple items that are listed under the sheriff office that we're recommending can be expended with capital funds. There were some items that were listed that, based on the requests and based on the departmental budgets, they will be able to purchase those items under their current general fund allocations. But we do have funding allocated within the sheriff's office or sheriff's department and judicial for fiscal year 25 through 28.
But I'm specifically talking about the pods, or whatever it is that we're going to do from that standpoint.
So it's broken down over fiscal years. So we're looking at the pods in fiscal year 2025. I believe the sheriff's original request for 24 was for the sprung structure, and we did not include that in this capital request because I know that came before the board and there was no action taken. I think you all requested some additional information, which I believe the sheriff did provide, but we did not include the sprung structure in the FY24 budget, FY24 capital funding request.
So I guess what my concern is, there is an immediate need now for the sheriff's office. And so with regards to capacity. And so I don't think that we can wait till 25. I think that we're going to have to start on at least one of those structures today, I think that the concern that a lot of the board has is that investing in the sprung structure was temporary, and that type of investment of $4 or $5 million did not make a lot of sense to us when we can do a permanent structure for just a little bit more. And so, you know, I just want to make sure that we're addressing his capacity need. We can't push it off to 25. So we're going to have to incorporate it now.
So I think we have a funding source for now. Obviously, with staffing vacancies, we are able to capture those expenses there. Ms. Sorrow has also indicated that we do have some jail construction funds that are available. I think what we will need to do is sit down and determine the best course of action. You are correct. The sprung structure was at a cost of about $4.2 million. And so if that is going to be the long-term solution, then we can certainly go back, revisit our list. But if you'll notice for FY 2024, the availability of funding was about $18 million. If we allocate that $4.2 million for the sprung structure, then I'm going to have to reduce some other much needed line items. But what I will do, Chair, is sit down with the Sheriff's Office and Ms. Sorrow and figure out what that funding source or what funds are available, and then determine the pod situation. I do know that Mr. Purvis, during our retreat, mentioned the possibility with the Judicial Center phasing that project in. And part of that project would include also an additional pod for the jail. But you are correct, the needs are definitely immediate. And so we'll definitely sit down and determine what would be a short-term fix.
Okay. Any questions from the board? Commissioner Wilson.
Sure. Where we at on moving forward with the public safety complex? We're looking at design now, or this year, next year?
So we are working through the design. If you'll recall, we have discussed the future of some county-owned facilities that we want to consider. And so in the next couple of weeks, we will be scheduling some meetings with the Board of Commissioners and with residents who may be impacted or at least need to know what is occurring as it pertains to the public safety facility. We have identified a location, but we are in the preliminary stages of laying that out. But I do believe, and I'll ask Lynn, I think she's still here. Have we, Lynn?
Come on up.
Come on up, Lynn.
Good morning, Commissioners, Chair Harrell. So we are in negotiations with a consultant to do a master plan that lays out everything that we would like within this identified property. And they will also be doing geotechnical work to confirm that it's feasible as well, that we don't have any rock or unsuitable soils. We just want to know if it's going to work well where we're planning to do it. And we actually have a meeting scheduled this week to go over their proposal. We just received their proposal, and once we get some clarification on the proposal and go over the scope of work that they're proposing, we will bring the proposal to you for approval to move forward.
Okay.
Thank you.
And then we are, Lynn, we are still waiting to hear back from the state on money that we requested from them as well for the airport, correct?
So actually, I'm glad you brought that up because we're all really proud, because I know it took everyone working really hard to make this happen. Every one of you, I think, were behind the scenes. But we do know for a fact that the state did earmark $2.68 million for hangar development at the airport. That's a 75% state match. The county will be required to do a 25% match, which is just under $900,000, and you will actually see the resolution for the contract at the May 16th board meeting.
Thank you. Thank you. Awesome. Okay. Any other questions from any, did Commissioner Thomas have any questions? Okay, she has no questions. Okay. All right. Thank you so much for the presentation. Human Resources, resolution approving and adopting the Henry County Employee Benefits and Medical Insurance Plan.
Good morning, Madam Chair, board members. We come before you today with a resolution to adopt and approve our Henry County's employee benefit and medical insurance renewals. It's very, very important that we take this in consideration because the resolution is threefold. It's about continuity, consistency, and comfort for our employees. Currently, we have 1,482 employees insured through Henry County. That makes up 86% of our full-time workforce. 1,139 of those employees are with United Healthcare. 343 of those employees are with Kaiser. So we come before you today, myself, Mr. Mike Gassis of the Gassis Agency, and Mr. James Ford, to talk about the renewals and the increase associated with those renewals, and also supplemental products that are enhancements that support those increases. So at this time, I'll yield to Mr. Ford, and he'll go through the presentation.
Good morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners. Thanks for having us here this morning. On behalf of the EPIC and Gassis agencies, we're honored to present the renewals for the 2023-2024 plan year. Now, if you can recall, last year we went through a pretty significant project to take all of the products out to market so that we could get the best pricing with the best benefits for the employees of Henry County. And so the renewal or some of the results after going through almost a full plan year, starting with the self-insured medical and RX, which is currently with UHC. The administrative fees, which are the core fees you pay every month, are unchanged. We negotiated a multi-year guarantee last year. There's specific stop loss, which just gives you additional coverage in case a claim exceeds the threshold. And then there's the aggregate stop loss, which is covers the group in aggregate, up 5%. One positive, well, the entire renewal is positive, but one increased positive is that the rebate guarantee will increase for this year. It comes back to the county. And then due to the diligent works of all the teams combined, including benefits and finance, the claims have run better than expected or better than projected for this year, realizing about an 8% medical trend. So with all those pieces combined, the recommendation to the budget rates for the Henry County employees medical plan is about 3%, totaling out to about $780,000. As we go down to the fully insured plan, which is with Kaiser, there's a 15% increase this year. The actual loss rate, for those of you that are concerned with that number, is actually about 24%, but we got it down to 15% increase. They wouldn't go much further, but they did give us a 1-month premium holiday, which equates to about $187,000, which offsets that increase just a little bit. Increased the budget's about $399,000, totaling 1.18 or so for total medical increase. The EAP, you all are aware that your peers, not just your peers, but every industry is being impacted by mental health. And so we wanted to bring forth a more robust integrated EAP provider, which is what we're doing with Optum UHC. There's the 3 visits per year per issue are still there. and an increased work-life program for incidents that may occur on the work site, and we need to bring out additional resources for mental health care. Flexible spending, HSA, and COBRA benefits. We needed a partner with a little bit better technology, some increased customer service, and then they have some opportunity for advanced credits, which means that if an employee needs some additional resources, the system sort of advances them a little money related to flexible spending. And of course, dental, vision, and life and disability are all in rate guarantees, so those are no rate changes to those products this year. There's a lot going on in this slide, but we strive to be transparent with how our analysis and rate development occurs. What's important is that the top line shows what the total rates or total equivalent premiums, you may hear that term used, the total rate per employee, and then the scenario 1, which is the recommendation that's coming from the team, is if the county absorbs 100% of those increases. So what are we doing next? Pretty aggressive in our timeline. Moving forward, if we're approved today, move forward with open enrollment meetings launching Friday, and then there's a 10-day open enrollment period. We are shifting the message and the tone of open enrollment this year. We know that this past year we've had some concerns with dependents and beneficiaries not being updated, which has created quite a few challenges for the HR team. And we're also putting a greater focus on wellness. We're underutilizing some of the wellness benefits. You all also may be aware that we've added an on-site wellness person part-time. So we're integrating that with the clinic strategy and with the benefit strategy to develop a stronger message to encourage employees to do some early detection via our open enrollment meetings. For technical uses, we'll submit open enrollment files to carriers. We will come back in person for the retiree program to do a little education and field any questions from those, specifically those retirees that are reaching age of 65 and rolling over to the Medicare Advantage plan. And then biometrics will be moved up a little bit this year just to resolve some administrative issues and, again, keep employees aware of their health status. And then we'll close out the year with flu shots. And that's a summary of the plan. Certainly happy to entertain any questions.
Okay, can you go back to the slide where you had Kaiser and United Healthcare?
Right there?
No, yes, that one.
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, yes,
It's
that
okay.
one. Okay. So with regards to Kaiser, premiums going up 15%. And how many employees that we have on Kaiser?
About 300-ish. And about
343.
660 total.
Is there another option to Kaiser?
So every year, the county manager has us go through the exercise so that we include a full takeover by the self-insured carrier, this year UHC. And what we find in our analysis is that cost-wise, there's not savings yet for the county to move all of those employees off of that Kaiser.
Okay, and then the other question I have is with regards to United Healthcare. We've had some complaints about how they pay claims, and so is that going to be resolved?
Yes, ma'am. We have actually about 2 months ago, we placed both team resources on site every other week so that we have folks here to address those employee concerns. And we also have a weekly Monday status meeting with UHC. That open list is reducing significantly, and they will be on site Friday as well. So that is absolutely priority, Madam Chair.
Okay. Okay, Commissioner Wilson.
Can you talk more about the retirees program? Tell me about the premiums and tell me about their deductions and what that service looks like.
Absolutely. So several years ago, we implemented a Medicare Advantage program for 65 and plus retirees who have both Medicare A and B. And that total premium, which is a fully insured plan, was significantly cheaper than keeping them on the self-insured plan. So we put in Medicare Advantage. A couple of years ago, we did a marketing of that plan, and we shifted that per retiree cost from, I believe, right at 176 down to 86.25 or so per retiree. We had a rate hold last year, so that'll be 2 years that we're paying 86.21 per retiree. And so now our next phase is to make sure that the retirees understand how to get the most out of that program.
And you're going to offer that information later for the retirees to come in?
Yes, sir. So in previous years, during COVID, we went virtual. Every other year, we've been in person. This year, we're going to be in person with a little more time. Ideally, we'd like all post-65 retirees to be on that plan. It saves the county money, and there are additional services offered by that plan. To do that, we have to educate the retirees on what that plan is. Yes, sir.
So I guess this will be a question for Human Resources. Do we have a way to contact all the retirees to get them in here?
We do, and we plan on doing that, to have a open forum with them, kind of like a fireside chat or a town hall meeting.
Okay, you're going to give them several dates, maybe
Yes,
a
sir.
whole week or something for that, because
Yes,
all
sir. And we're gonna
retirees
give them ample
they don't
time.
stay at home, they travel a lot, so.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
the plan is to give them a couple dates and bring in a snack or two as well. We will do physical letters around the physical letters, and they will have physical people to contact if they have any questions.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
So I have one last question.
Yes, ma'am.
Is United Healthcare our best choice?
Once we went through the RFP process last year and followed those steps, they were the recommendation, and at this point they are. But let me say this, we monitor claims, we monitor open items from employees constantly. That's what we do as your partner. And so if those things begin to grow, then we'll come back and address what we need to do going forward, Madam Chair. Absolutely.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right. If there's no further questions, can I get a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor? And Commissioner Thomas, vote is yes too, so it passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mhm. Okay, awesome. Okay, our next item on the agenda is annexation.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, Commissioners, and the Henry County community. What we have before you today is annexation request from the City of Locust Grove for about 15 acres using 100% method from the RA zoning district in Henry County to the City of Locust Grove RA zoning district as well. On this map here, you see everything in green is the city. The parcel that's outlined in green with the hash marks is the 15 acres that they're requesting to annex into the city. And this is a future land use map identifying the same piece of property, identified as low density residential. Staff has no objection to the annexation. And if you know about what's going on in the area, Price Road is getting ready to be improved, as well as the interchange, Bethlehem interchange. So and the Price Road actually bisects through their property. So they're buying property on the backside of the on their existing parcel to make up for what's being taken from them on the front side. So again, staff has no objection to the annexation request. I'll take any questions.
Oh, okay, any questions?
I don't have any questions.
Okay, all right, no questions, all in favor? I mean, can I get a motion? Do we vote? Do we do? Is it a public hearing? We don't do that? Okay, okay, all right.
I don't think
No,
Okay.
as long as there's no objection, we're good.
Oh, so we're good, we don't need no motion, we're good, okay.
All right,
all
awesome,
right.
thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Public comments, Stephanie, anyone signed up for public comments? Okay. Approval of the minutes for March 21st budget workshop, March 21st, 2023 BOC regular meeting, April 18th call meeting, and April 18th regular BOC meeting. Can I get a motion to approve all of those minutes?
I move to approve all of those previous minutes.
Okay. Okay, got a motion and a second. All in favor? Okay. Before we do the upcoming meetings, I'm going to ask our county manager, Sherry Matthews, to come forward and to make an announcement.
I keep looking at my watch because I'm not sure if it's morning or afternoon, so still good morning. I would like to take this time to do a point of recognition because we do have a Henry County staff member who will be ascending to the level of county management, and this will be his last meeting with the county. I'm certainly saddened to see Mr. Harold Cooper leave Henry County, but certainly happy that he was homegrown here at Henry County, and he will be joining the ranks of all of us other lovely county managers who love what we do and working with Noon County as their newly appointed county manager. Harold has been such an asset not only to the county but to the community, and so he will certainly be missed as a valuable asset within our human resources department, but I'm certainly happy that Noon has selected him. He'll be our neighbor. I'm sure that he will try to make Noon better than Henry, which is absolutely not possible. But in better news, I do want to take this time to personally say thank you, Harold Cooper, for your service to Henry County, and I know that you will go and do great things. Remember, Henry County is always a great place to serve. You coined that, and so thank you for your service as our HR director, and as I will say, our Nick Saban in this organization. So thank you.
Harold, you want to come and say something to us?
I just want to thank the community, the Board of Commissioners, the workforce, there's a term called Ubuntu. I am because we are. And if I had never received the opportunity here, I would not be able to ascend to the next level. I am grateful for being a part of Henry County. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. And I will do a good deed in Newton because of you fine people in this room here. Sherry, I can't thank you enough. The leadership here, Shannon being a bridge, bringing me back here. My resident therapist, David, Michael Harris, Mark Ammerman, Hutch Purvis. You know, I'm always the guy that's the people's champ, but sometimes I need encouragement. And those gentlemen are my encouragers. I want to thank this board. I always tell Commissioner Wilson, he tells me no, and he tells me why he tells me no. And I can respect that, but he's always trying to work with me. Commissioner Anglin, you've been a breath of fresh air from day one. You were thoroughly immersed in the improvement and the betterment of this county. Commissioner Lewis, we've only been together for a brief moment, but you've showed that you have a vested interest in what's right. Commissioner Thomas, I know you're in your retreat or what have you, but you know how I feel about you, and I know how you feel about me. I hope you hear me. There's nothing but love. Last but definitely not least, Chair Harrell and I will be uniquely bonded together forever. And when this opportunity came about, I spoke with Sherry first, I spoke with the chair second, and she gave me some words of encouragement. And those words of encouragement freed me to ascend. And those same words of encouragement from Sherry freed me to ascend. So I want to thank every one of you. And last but not least, the boutique outfit that does big and bold things. Those 8 ladies across the hall that boss me around, the Department of Human Resources. For an organization of this size, those 8 young ladies do incredible things. They definitely review the Harvard Business Review. They know how to manage up, right? But they are the reason why I'm successful. And I always tell people, I'm not about credit. The only credit I'm worried about is my credit score. But I appreciate the thoughts and the well wishes, not only from the people in this room, but our equipment operators, our public safety team, our stormwater team. It's just been flowing in. And that's because they believe I had their best interest at heart, and they trusted me, just like everyone in this room trusted me. So I want to thank you all, and I will do a good deed because I am a reflection of everyone in this room. Thank you.
Well, Harold, you will truly be missed, but I know where to find you. So our next upcoming meetings, May 16th is our regular scheduled board meeting at 6:30 p.m. and June 6th at 9 a.m. is our next regular scheduled board meeting. Meeting is adjourned. Everyone have a wonderful week.